Thanks be to God. Give us courage and wisdom to carry on.
Thank you, Sue. I am a journaler. Any other journalers out there? Not one? Okay, thank you. Okay, a couple. That's good. I write in my journal. I've leaned into writing into my journal when I go on a plane, because that's when I have no other pulls on my time. And I journal so that I won't forget. I journal so that I can remember and rejoice. Today happens to be Grandparents' Day. Did you know that? I didn't either. I guess I didn't know that was a thing until I was researching the lectionary for today, and I learned that today happens to be Grandparents' Day. So I was starting to think about my own grandparents, Harold and Hazel Tinkham, and Dwayne and Josephine Dudley. I love that these old names are coming back. My great niece is named after her great-great-grandmother, Hazel. I know that grandparents, they have so much wisdom and they have stories to share, and I remember being that granddaughter that my mom would say, you need to ask them some questions, and then you need to listen to their answers. In my childhood home in Gothenburg, Nebraska, we had a music room. It had a piano, which is why it was the music room, that was about it. And it had an earth stove. And above the earth stove were 4 pictures that my mom had there always. The first was a watercolor of a 3-year-old, and she was in a calico with sort of a lace collar. One was a graduation picture, lots of white chiffon with a handkerchief hem. One was a wedding picture. It was the bride is in a simple kind of waltz-length dress with a boat neckline. And one was an outdoor photo, another graduation picture, but this time in a lavender jumpsuit. The first is my great-grandmother, and that's on the left. Her name was Flora. I couldn't find the picture of her as the 3-year-old, so that's her as an adult. The next one is my grandmother, Hazel, and that is her in her graduation dress from high school. The next is my mom, Donna Dudley, in her wedding outfit. And of course, that is me in my lavender. That was my senior picture. I really leaned hard into purple back then. So there I am. I never saw or touched or ever met my great-grandmother. But the genes and the hopes and the fears and the values of that woman who was born and raised in the 19th century has gone indirectly into the mix that is me. No matter how old you are right now, whether or not you have children old enough to have children, what is it that you would like them to remember about you? What values and ideas of yours would you like to pass on to them? About 10 years ago, my brother Steve gave my mom a book, and it was called 10 Things I Want My Kids to Remember Forever. She told me she didn't do anything with that book, but that it prompted an idea for a sermon. She pondered, considered how many things that she would want to share. She was a United Methodist pastor and went to seminary when she was 52. So she started to think, and she thought, oh, I'll do 3 things I want my grandkids to know. And then she did 5, and then she settled on 7. And I'm going to share those with you today. First, life is like a crazy quilt. Do you know what a crazy quilt is? It's not the beautiful pattern quilt, which is repeating blocks. It's not the theme quilt, which is one huge design with a kind of symbolic of something or representative of something. The crazy quilt was very popular in the 30s. It was during the Depression times, and it took bits and pieces of cloth, velvet, cotton, wool, tweed, denim, whatever, and put them all together. Each piece might be a different size and shape. The idea was not to waste anything. No matter how ugly, no matter how small, they didn't have much choice about what went into their crazy quilt. You used whatever came to you. But its beauty, and many of them are truly beautiful, comes from the way those bits and pieces of fabric are pieced together side by side. What my mom said was that she wanted her grandkids to remember forever is that life is like a crazy quilt. Bits and pieces of ideas and experiences, feelings, some we intentionally pull into our lives. Some are just there, and some are pushed into our lives. We have no choice sometimes except how they fit in the overall design. Now, our crazy quilt might be terribly ugly, but it also can be incredibly beautiful, depending on the angle with which you see it. And so it is with life, terrible sometimes, but also beautiful. Our crazy quilt can never be stitched in isolation. Who I am is the sum of all the total of all of those that I have met, and all of those whose ideas I've agreed with, and ideas that I have not agreed with. I don't have much control all the pieces that make up me. I didn't get to choose my parents, or where I was born, or the time or the place. My friends were sometimes limited to those I just bumped into, and sometimes those I specifically chose. But I did stitch it all together. I did not create me. I am not responsible for the wounds and scars that mar me. I had no control over the gifts of time and talent and opportunity, but I've decided how and whether to use them. Then, my mom says, I want my grandkids to remember, plant the tomatoes and potatoes and corn, but don't forget to plant the roses and the peonies. Both are important. What's necessary and what's beautiful. Science and art, maybe. The wonderful thing is that both science and both art can be necessary and beautiful. Number 3, some decisions are all black and white, but most or a lot of them are gray. We will need to spend a big chunk of our lives struggling with the question of what is wrong, always wrong, and what is right and true and good, always and forever. You see, most of us agree that what's black and white for the other guy is always right. Even for ourselves sometimes, until we stand toe-to-toe with issues. I can't tell my grandkids what decisions should be black and white for them and which needs some gray. That's something that they will have to struggle with on their own. We can't expect to use different standards for them, whoever they are, than what we use for ourselves. 4, I hope my grandkids never lose their sense of wonder, that they never quit being curious. I want them to try to see the big picture and hard work of understanding how it all fits together. This is one of my favorite stories that my mom tells about me. At 6, she'd seen her daddy cut through skin and fat and muscle and lift out mucus-covered bloody calves 100 times or more. He was a veterinarian. And she had watched intently as he adjusted ugly steel blue calf pullers and pulled hard and steady until new life plopped onto a concrete floor. But she had never seen natural birth. So when she came running down from a calf shed of a rancher friend, her eyes were round and with wonder, and her voice slow and quiet in awe as she said, "Mama, I saw God pull a calf, all by God's self." And I remember that day. It was amazing. Number 5, Yogi Bear said it. The future ain't what it used to be. I don't know what he meant by that, and probably he didn't either. But what I mean by that, my mom saying this, is that even though the future is built on the past, it is never quite the same. The good news is that we hopefully never make the same mistakes or repeat them that we had in the past. The bad news is that we keep finding new mistakes to make. The bad news is that we can't relive the triumphs of yesterday. We can't go back to the old days, no matter how good they seemed to be. But the good news is that we have a chance to make this new day and this new year even better than the ones before. Number 6, life isn't fair, but. How many of us heard that growing up? I think most of us. I heard my mom say it constantly. The first part of this sentence is important and very true, but even more important is what you put after the but. To all of us after my dad died, life isn't fair, but life is good. To me, when I wasn't crowned coronation queen when I was a senior, life isn't fair, but you will survive. To a husband who's lost his wife at 51 from a rare heart disease, life isn't fair, but life is still worth living. When I first began coming to church here, we had a member named Harold Wright. He was a great guy. He led our Sunday school sometimes. And I remember him talking about this exact concept when his son threw that statement out at him. His son said, "Life's not fair," angry about something. And Harold turned to him and said, "You are right. And you are lucky life is not fair. Because if life were fair, maybe you would only be eating rice. And if life were fair, you would maybe be living in a shanty. You are lucky that God gave you an extra dose of privilege." 7, we all have to be heroes and heroines. Now, this is my mom's definition of those. Heroes can be either a woman or a man. A hero is anyone who initiates, who goes out and stirs the water, who has new ideas, or wants to try out someone else's new ideas, or someone who creates. Heroes are the inventors and the artists and the teachers who always come up with new ideas. Heroines can be women or men too. But a heroine is anyone who responds to those around them or to a situation. Heroines are office assistants who know the boss well enough to do what she wants even before she knows she wants it. Heroines are general practitioners who don't discover any new medicine or any new dramatic research, but who simply respond to the need of the patient as best as they can. My great-grandmother lived in a time and an age when it was way more acceptable to be a heroine than a hero. This is one of my favorite stories about her. One summer, there was a train wreck. My great-grandpa bought 2 bushels of lemons. That was a lot of lemons for a family even of 8. And my grandma simply decided she was going to make lemon pies for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's all they had until those lemons were gone. She served them consistently, and at noon only, she would throw in a potato or a little bit of meat. She wrapped every one of those lemons in paper cloth and stored them in the cellar, and only 5 spoiled out of the entire 2 bushels, which was actually a small miracle. an especially unwelcome one for the kids who were never again particularly fond of lemon pie. No one was quite sure why my great-grandmother was doing that. Was she just being really economical? Or was she just making a point about a man stupid enough to buy 2 bushels of lemons? Either way, she was both a heroine and a hero. So interestingly, eventually, this sermon was written, those 7 things my mom had put together a long time ago. She did eventually come to write a booklet for us, and it's called 12, a nice round number. So you see, 3 didn't work, 5 didn't work, 7 didn't work, so she went to 12. This is what she wants us to remember. She created 12 lists of 12. 12 movies she would see again, 12 places she wanted to revisit, 12 questions she still had, 12 individuals who made a difference in her life, 12 things she regretted, 12 good decisions she made, 12 memories from her Tinkham family, 12 Dudley memories, 12 accomplishments she felt good about, 12 things she preached about and tried to live out, 12 of her favorite recipes, and 12 books that made a difference in her life. And then, because she was a voracious reader, she cheated. And she added 12 of her favorite authors, 12 of her nonfiction favorites, 12 of her favorite book club books, and 12 books that she reads to escape. All in here. This concept was created for her to think about what she wanted her kids, her grandkids, and eventually her great-grandkids to remember about her. It's not just about names and places. It's about what gives life meaning. What it is, not just the good stuff, but the bad stuff as well. The stuff that we pull into our lives and the stuff that gets pushed into our lives. Hopefully this gives you a chance to think about what you would do and what you want your kids to think about and know about you that are coming here hopefully in 50 years. So here's the 7 things that she had listed. Life's a crazy quilt. Don't forget the roses and peonies. Some issues are black and white, but many are gray. Nothing's more important than a sense of wonder or curiosity. The future ain't what it used to be. Thank goodness, and too bad. Life isn't fair, but. And all of us need to be heroines and heroes. This Grandparents' Day, we thank God for our own grandparents and for the grandparents in this room and those that are watching online. Grandparents make a difference in the crazy quilt of who you are today. And we thank God for the past with all its bittersweet memories. May those become a part of our crazy quilt so that we can pass those on to the unborn. We thank God for the present world in which we live. And of course, it's imperfect, but it's good. We thank God for the hope that we call the future. It may be no better than the past or the present, but maybe, just maybe, our grandkids will do a better job of putting together one crazy quilt. What was and what is and what will be. So consider today picking up a journal and writing in it. Remember who has shaped us, who we will get to shape, and then let us rejoice and be glad.